The story begins with the death of a country's king due to unknown reasons. When he wakes up, he realizes that he has been reincarnated in a new world as a baby. His mother's name is Alice, a kind-hearted and gentle person, and his father is Reynolds, a dependable and charismatic man despite the occasional childishness. They named him Arthur, or Art for short. Despite being born into a loving family, he finds his new life as a baby very difficult. Art realizes that this new world is set in a much earlier time period. Art still has memories from his past life, so despite his young age, he still has the mental faculties of an adult. He quickly realizes that he must learn everything about his new world as knowledge is power. During one of his father's occasional bouts of childishness, he ends up getting injured when his father started tossing and turning him around. His mother is able to instantly heal him using magic, making Art realize that there is more to this new world than he initially thought. In his previous life, Art was a great king who led armies and fought warriors from all over the world. But in his new life, his proudest moment comes when he learns how to crawl. Using this new ability, he sneaks out of the room every night after his mother puts him to bed. He crawls to the library using his tiny body to research more about this world. He learns that the continent he was born in is comprised of 3 kingdoms. There is Elenoir, the kingdom in the deep forest where elves live; Darv, the underground dwarf kingdom; and Safine, the human kingdom, and also the most populated one. Art discovers that this world also has a monarch system, but the kingship is passed down rather than earned like in his previous world. This world is also very undeveloped compared to his previous one, but this is due to magic. He is familiar with ki, which was used in his previous world to strengthen one's body and weapons. This world has a similar force called mana. Unlike ki, which was present inside a person's body, mana exists everywhere in the surroundings. Mana is also very rare, as only 1 in 100 people possess it. It can be used in many ways, but the 2 most common are augmenting and conjuring. Augmenting is used to enhance one's body to have greater strength, defense, and agility, but this limits the range of the user. Conjuring, on the other hand, is used to emit mana to the outside world. But to do so, a caster will have to gather mana from the surrounding along from within their core. Alice is from a class called Deviant. They are a rare type of mage who can use restorative mana. According to the books from the library, a child manifests their mana core around early adolescence to their late teens. Art realizes that this sounds strangely familiar to a ki center. In his previous life, children were taught to form their ki centers by meditating and gathering the scattered fragments around their bodies. Art realizes that he can do the same to form his mana core. But before he can get started, he is found by his mother, who has been looking for him since he sneaked out. It has been over a year since he was born into this new world. He has started walking. He is adored by his parents, especially his mother, who has begun writing down their everyday life in a journal. Ray has even started giving him private sword lessons, but he is quickly stopped by Alice. She has noticed Art's fascination with the Merchants Guild, so the doting mother takes him there every day to watch the adventurers perform magic. With Ray being his father, she is sure that her son will have an interest in becoming an adventurer himself. She can't help but worry and hopes that her son is better than every other enthusiastic teen who wants to be a famous adventurer. She has also noticed her son's habit of sneaking into the library every night. 2 years have passed now since Art first made his difficult journey to the library. He continues his journey to learn more about this world. He observes his father as he practices his magic. After chanting a spell for almost 3 minutes, the rocks around him begin floating. Art's curiosity grows as he wonders what kind of a spell it is. To his disappointment, flinging the rocks a small distance is all that his father manages to do. But that is to be expected, as Ray is an augmenter. They don't use flashy moves, but instead use their magic to enhance their physical strength. After watching his father practice, he tries to go back to the library. Despite his adult mind, he is still a child, as even the short distance between the chair and the floor seems to scare him. As he struggles to get down using his small body, Alice mistakes his efforts as him being sleepy. She tries to take him to his bedroom to put him down for a nap, but Art insists on going to the library. Despite Alice's refusal, he has learned how to get what he wants. Using his innocent, cute face, he begs his mother to take him to the library. Unable to resist the power of his cute face, she gives in and agrees to take him to the library. Despite the embarrassment, Art knows that a warrior must use every weapon in their arsenal. As he continues his study, Alice hears a loud noise from outside. She instantly knows it's one of Ray's antics. As she goes outside to check, Art once again starts his meditation to form a monocore. He has been doing this for the last 2 years in secret, slowly moving the tens of thousands of fragments throughout his body to form a single core. He now understands why it would take until adolescence to form the core naturally. Outside, Alice finds the source of the sound. It seems that Ray has knocked down another tree while practicing. Just as Art moves the final piece inside his body, the two parents see a huge blast inside their house. Ray instantly grabs Alice and uses his body to protect her from the blast. Fearing for the life of his son, Ray quickly dashes inside the wrecked house to look for Art. What he witnesses leaves him shocked. Instead of being injured, Art is perfectly fine while floating in the air in a meditative state. His parents realize that it can only mean one thing, that Art has finally manifested his manicore. Art couldn't be happier as his 2 years of hard work finally paid off, but it seems that he didn't realize all the damage he caused during his meditation. Another year goes by after he formed his monocore. While his mother teaches him how to read and write, Art has learned the basics of mana manipulation and augmentation from his father. Since his body was still too small for fighting, he only did basic strength training with Ray at first. Not too long after, his father decides to practice with Art using wooden swords. Ray's instructions are usually too abstract for a normal 4-year-old, but Art understands and executes them without much problem. Despite being only 4, he has become much stronger than Ray anticipated. Every day, Art meditates to increase his strength. In this world, one's strength is determined by the color of one's monocore. A monocore starts off black due to blood and other impurities. Over time, the core becomes purer, and thus the user gets stronger. The monocore has 7 colors. Black, which is the least pure, then red, orange, yellow, silver, and finally white, which is the purest. Each stage also has 3 shades that go from dark to solid and finally light. The lighter the shade, the purer the core. Art's meditation is once again interrupted as he is called for dinner by Alice. At the dinner table, Ray makes a suggestion. Seeing how fast Art is growing, he believes that it's time that they get Art a proper mentor. The discussion gets heated and they finally agree to let Art decide what he wants to do. He tells them that maybe they can all move to this city. This way he won't have to be alone. His parents burst out laughing as they realize that it was such an obvious solution. With everyone now in agreement, the family decides that they will move to Xyrus to find a mentor for Art. Alice and Ray quickly start preparing for their 3-week journey to Xyrus. They enlist the help of their old friends from an adventuring party called Twin Horns. With a goodnight kiss from his mother, he prepares to go to sleep as their journey starts in the morning. The Twin Horns have been in their town for a while. They were also the ones who helped rebuild the house after Art accidentally destroyed it. The party consists of 2 conjurers and 3 augmenters. Art is excited to finally move out of this small town and see the real world. In the morning, the family meets up with the adventuring party. They all make introductions with Art as they each pick him up and toss him around. Firstly, there's Adam Crinch, an augmenter who specializes in the spear. Next is a beautiful woman named Angela Rose. She is a conjurer who uses wind magic. Following her is the gentle giant of the group named Durden Walker. He is also a conjurer who specializes in earth magic. He gently puts Art down. Art gets the same vibe as a big gentle dog from him. Next is a mysterious pale-looking girl. From her looks, one would assume that she is an assassin. She is Jasmine Flamesworth, an augmenter who uses dual daggers. She is not the talkative one and keeps to herself. Finally, there is Helen Shard, an elf who uses magic archery. She is probably the nicest and most well-behaved in the group. Now that they have made their acquaintances, they start loading up their carriages in preparation to leave. They travel on 2 carriages being pulled by giant lizards. Their journey to Xyrus has finally begun. On their journey, they encounter monsters, which the party easily takes care of. The long journey really seems to be slowly wearing down Art. During the nighttime at the campfire, Helen tries to make small talk with him to cheer him up. She asks him if he really did have an awakening only a year ago. Adam, who is also bored, has been listening in on their conversation. Since Ray had been bragging about his son the entire journey, he decides to see for himself how strong Art really is. After getting Ray's approval, Adam grabs Art and goes to have a sparring session with him. With everyone watching, Art feels like he has no other choice but to fight. After using his magic to enhance himself, Art dashes forward toward Adam holding his wooden blade. This obviously doesn't work against the experienced adventurer who easily parries Art's sword using his spear, but Art doesn't give up and goes in for another attack. After dodging his attack, Adam tries to counter him, but Art uses his quick speed to dodge. He tries to tackle Adam, but because of his small body, it doesn't seem to have much impact. Once again, Adam counters him with a kick, but is unable to hit him. Adam decides to fight more seriously and uses his magic to send Art flying. Just before he can continue his attack, he is stopped by Durden, who slaps him on the head. Adam is impressed by Art, so much so that he believes there is no way he hasn't received any combat training. Even Ray is surprised to see him use moves that he didn't even teach him. Art tries to brush it off by saying that he learned it by reading it from books. Even the usually quiet Jasmine wants to learn his movement techniques. Art is now the mentor of the adventuring party instead of the other way around. Several days have passed since the group started their journey toward Exiris. They stopped at a lake to take a bath and relax. As their journey continues, the adventurers also continue their training, with Adam, Helen, and Ray making decent progress. Jasmine was even able to learn a few techniques from Art. After the short break, the group continues their journey once again. Art notices that his mother seems to be sick, but Alice assures him that she is fine. Art also finds himself being stalked by Jasmine. After helping her learn new techniques, she wants to continue their training. Their peaceful journey comes to an abrupt stop as they are suddenly attacked by bandits. The bandits shoot the carriage with arrows. Alice tries to protect Art by shielding him. Thankfully, Angela manages to protect everyone using her wind magic. She didn't manage to save everyone as Helen is struck in her leg with an arrow. However, she doesn't let it faze her as she breaks the arrow off and prepares to shoot back. The bandits had planned an ambush and the group finds themselves completely surrounded. Their leader orders the bandits to kill everyone except for the women and children as they plan to sell them for money. Art prepares to fight as well. As he is about to take out his knife, Alice notices her son's anger and quickly hugs him. She tells him it's fine as she is here for him, making him calm down. The bandits continue their relentless attack while the twin horns along with Ray try to fight them off while protecting the carriages. Angela once again protects Alice and Art from arrows using her wind magic. Ray goes on a rampage, taking out multiple bandits in quick succession. He is supported by Helen, who uses her archery skills to protect him. Jasmine and Adam also go on a killing spree using powerful attacks to take out many bandits. Jasmine finds her match when she comes across one robber using a long wipe. Art is observing her fight and quickly realizes her disadvantage against her opponent's range. Suddenly, Ray is sent flying into the carriage, completely wrecking it. It seems to be the leader of the bandit, as he proved to be too strong for him. Art quickly tells his mother to heal Ray. Art realizes that there is something wrong with her as she tells him she can't. He wonders why she isn't healing him. Still, she uses some of her magic to use a minor healing spell on him. Ray tells Art that as soon as the spell is done healing him, he should run away with Alice. He refuses to run, telling Ray that he can fight with them, but he pats him on his head and tells him to protect his mother and their baby, revealing that Alice is pregnant. The couple was going to surprise Art with the news when they got to Exiris. With this revelation, he agrees to run away with Alice, promising that he will protect her. Ray tells Art to get ready and informs him that the bandits have 4 mages on their side. Seeing Alice's healing ability, the leader orders his men to not let her get away. As soon as the healing is done, Art quickly grabs Alice's hand and tries to run away. The bandits turn their attention to the duo to stop them. Adam tells them to escape while he holds them off. One of the bandits uses his bow to try and shoot them with an arrow. Art quickly senses the danger and turns around to stop it. He uses his wooden sword to stop the arrow. Though the sword fails to stop the arrow and breaks, it manages to change the arrow's direction toward the ground, so no one gets injured. The bandit is shocked by Art. The momentary carelessness is all it takes for Helen to shoot the bandit with her own arrow, killing him. As the two continue to try and escape, Art realizes that something is off. Ray told him that the bandits have 4 mages, but when he counts them, he only sees 3. The leader suddenly shouts an order to someone to kill the pair so they don't escape. It's the 4th mage. He uses water magic to form a big swirling water bubble and throws it at the pair. Art knows that even if he dodges it, his mother will get hit. Seeing only one way to protect her, he pushes her out of the way. He gets hit by the water magic and is pushed off of the cliff. Wanting to take the mage out with him, he throws his knife at the mage with a string attached to it. The mage tries to hold on to the edge of the cliff, but it breaks off, sending the two plummeting down. As they fall, Durden tries to use his earth magic to save them. He makes a giant hand using magic and tries to grab them. Art recalls his past life as a king. In this world, the king was no more than a puppet, while the council was the one that actually governed the country, managing its politics and economy. In a world riddled with problems, wars were replaced with duels and armies with kings. Art was one of these puppet kings. Tired of this life, he decided to retire. Despite being the strongest, he was still an orphan with all his loved ones gone and would do anything to be with them. In the present, he wakes up after having survived the long fall. The bandit mage, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. Art knows that if he wants to survive, he will have to become stronger. He struggles to move and grabs a piece of fruit sitting on a log beside him. He gulps it down along with his remaining water. He uses all his strength to get up. His injured body just refuses to do what he wants. After getting up, the first thing he does is retrieve his dagger, which is still stuck in the bandit's leg. When he looks up at the cliff, he is surprised at how he managed to survive. He doesn't even know how long it has been since the fall, but it doesn't matter. If he wants to survive, he must keep moving. Just as he starts walking away, he hears an eerie voice. He gets scared and quickly takes cover behind a tree. At first, he thinks that maybe the voice is coming from the dead bandit. Art takes a stick and pokes the bandit just to make sure he is dead. The voice continues speaking, telling Art that it's not coming from the corpse. He is relieved that the bandit is not alive when suddenly he hears a voice coming from the bushes. He readies to dagger to meet the potential threat, as he knows better than to trust a strange voice. He asks the voice who she is, and if she is the one who saved him. It was a false alarm, as the culprit behind the sound was just a rabbit. The voice replies to Art's second question, confirming that they were the ones who saved him. As for his first question, he will have to come to their dwelling if he wants to find out. At first, he is hesitant to do what the voice is saying, but she tells him that she is the only one who can help him reunite with his family. The mention of his family floods his mind with questions. Are they alive? Did they make it to Ixyrus safely? Art, desperate to see his family again, surrenders and requests the voice's assistance in finding them. Just as the voice agrees, Art's eyes turn crimson and his vision focuses on a massive boulder in the heart of the wood. With that, he starts his journey towards her dwelling. While walking, Art couldn't help but think about the voice. He wonders what kind of magic she used to rescue him and why she chose to save only him and not the bandit. While trekking through the forest, he hears the sound of a river. Having not bathed in a while, he rushes towards it and jumps into the river. As the sun begins to set, he continues his journey to the rock. Art realizes that the forest is abundant with mana, but it's unusual that there are no beasts roaming around. As night falls, he finally arrives at the rock, and the voice directs him to enter the crevice. While proceeding further, Art stumbles and falls into a cavern. As he stands up, he is petrified to see an enormous creature perched on a throne, crafted from rocks. He is so scared that he falls back again. The creature resembles a colossal suit of armor with crimson luminescent lights for its eyes and mouth. It is the source of the voice that Art has been hearing throughout his journey. The monster gets up and starts moving toward him. As the creature approaches him, Art notices a big gash in its stomach. It seems like it is injured. The monster extends its colossal hand towards Art and assists him in standing up. She also tells him that it'll take some time for her to open a dimensional rift to transport him home. So in the meantime, he can stay in the cave and eat the fruits there to nourish himself. Art expresses gratitude and proceeds to pick up the unfamiliar fruit, which looks like an oversized grape. As they consume the fruit, Art reminisces about the joyful moments when he dined with his family. As the two eat, he asks for her name and she introduces herself as Sylvia. With his initial fear of Sylvia's appearance diminishing, he feels more at ease and proceeds to ask her all the questions that have been bothering him. She tells him that this place is located between the Beast Glades and the Forest of Elshire. No one comes near because she's been warding off anyone who comes close. Art is the first person to have ever entered this place. Sylvia reveals to Art that she resides alone in the cavern as she has no one left. Additionally, she informs him that she has enemies who want something she possesses, and her wound resulted from her last battle. When Art inquires about why Sylvia saved him, she confesses that she herself doesn't know the reason, but perhaps it's because she has become lonely. As her wound starts to fester and she needs to be in good physical condition to create the portal, Sylvia bids Art goodnight and excuses herself for the evening. As the fearsome figure begins to walk away, Art couldn't help but think how lonely she looked. Sylvia suddenly turns back and tells him that in case he was wondering, his family and friends are safe. Upon hearing this, Art is overcome with emotion and starts to cry. Art and Sylvia's initial encounter was fraught with fear and uncertainty. However, as time passed, they grew closer and began spending hours chatting while she worked on the dimensional rift. Weeks turned into months, and Art began to understand what kind of a person this mysterious being is. Sylvia is the very definition of the phrase, "Don't judge a book by its cover." Even though she looks terrifying, she is kind and gentle. She reminds Art of his mother, who was also kind and gentle. On the other hand, his hatred for the bandits who caused him separate from his family grows stronger, and he promises himself to kill every last one of them. Sensing his animosity, Sylvia flicks him on his forehead, sending him flying. She tells Art that letting his heart be consumed by hatred will only cause harm to himself. Instead, she advises him to move on with his life and live with pride. Art is struck deeply by being lectured by a monster that looks like the epitome of evil. Sylvia's words about facing the future with a smile and learning from misfortunes resonates with him. Growing curious, she asks him how he managed to form his mana core at such an early age. He simply replies by telling her that he is a natural-born genius. With that being the case, she decides to teach him a new technique. Art is left surprised as Sylvia demonstrates her technique of gathering mana while moving. She tells him that with enough practice, he can even gather mana while fighting. However, when Art tries to do it himself, he fails to do so. Sylvia explains that monsters are born with the ability to multitask mana collection and movement, while humans typically awaken to their mana abilities later in life and struggle to do so. However, as a natural-born genius with an early mana core, Art has the potential to master this technique with practice. While Sylvia prepares the portal, Art starts practicing the new technique. Although he finds it difficult at first, he eventually manages to do it. Excited to share his progress with Sylvia, he looks over to her, but notices she has fallen over in pain as her wound worsens. Art hurries over to check on her, only to find that her bleeding has significantly worsened. He tries to flip her over, but due to her size, he is unable to do so. With the help of the new technique he recently learned, Art concentrates on gathering mana and successfully manages to turn her over. As he examines her wound, Art's heart sinks as he realizes that creating the portal had caused it to worsen significantly. He understands now that she had gone through with the risky endeavor despite the consequences, solely for his sake. Overcome with emotion, Art breaks down into tears as he weeps uncontrollably. Sylvia attempts to console him. Despite her worsening condition, she urges him not to blame himself and reminds him that their time together is limited. She expresses that she would hate for them to spend their remaining moments dwelling on the past. In an attempt to comfort Art, Sylvia reminds him that he is actually doing her a favor by helping her exit the treacherous cave more quickly. However, her words fail to stem his tears. As Sylvia's life begins to fade away, she makes the decision to reveal her true form. The dark armor that once encased her body begins to fall, revealing a magnificent white dragon in its place. Art is left shocked, but Sylvia tells him that they don't have much time. Now that she has undone her veil, they will be coming soon. With urgency in her voice, Sylvia rushes over to complete the portal and explains to Art that there are important things she must tell him before they part ways. As she speaks, she instructs him to cover the egg with the feather to conceal its aura. She then touches him, causing a strange glowing pattern to suddenly materialize on both of his arms. She assures him that all will be revealed in due time, but with time running out, she can only create a portal that will teleport him somewhere in the vicinity of his house. However, before they can depart, a strange monster suddenly enters the cave, causing it to start collapsing. He has the same dark armor that she was wearing. He addresses her as Lady Sylvia and demands her to hand something over. Before the monster can approach them any further, she uses her powers to freeze time for everyone except herself and Art, with time suspended around them. Sylvia makes a confession to Art, revealing that she intentionally prolonged the teleportation spell so that she could spend more time with him. Before they parted ways, as her life begins to slip away, she implores Art to call her grandma just this once. Fueled by grief and love for his departing friend, Art clings to Sylvia's wings and insists that they go together. However, she bids him farewell and flings him toward the portal. Just before he is teleported away, Art honors Sylvia's final wish and calls her grandma, acknowledging the bond they shared. He finds himself suddenly teleported to a forest. and the first thing that comes to his mind is the realization that it was likely the last time he would ever see Sylvia. With his heart heavy with grief, his mind becomes flooded with memories from the last 4 months that he spent with her. Despite the brevity of their time together, Sylvia had treated him as if he were her own kin. As he lies on the ground, consumed by grief, he is suddenly startled by a voice in his head. It is Sylvia's voice, unmistakably so. However, he soon realizes that it is merely a recording of Sylvia's last message for him before they parted ways. As a parting gift, Sylvia infused her will onto Art, telling him that his future development as a mage would depend on how well he uses this gift. She explains that once his mana core surpasses the white stage, he will hear from her again and she will reveal everything to him. As Sylvia bids him farewell, she addresses Art as King Grey, the name he had in his past life, which leaves him with lingering questions long after her voice fades away. He wonders how long she had known his true identity and why she had kept it a secret from him. Focusing on reuniting with his family, Art sets aside his questions and decides to climb a tree for a better view of his surroundings. From atop the tree, he quickly realizes that he's in Elshire Forest. Despite being barely able to use mana rotation, he's able to use magic for a much longer time. With this boost in power, he's able to move around the forest much faster. He jumps from one tree to another with great speed. As he moves, he suddenly hears the faint sound of a carriage rumbling through the woods. As Art approaches the carriage, his curiosity quickly turns to horror as he hears the faint but unmistakable sound of a child's cry. Drawing closer, he realizes that the carriage belongs to a group of ruthless slave traders who have kidnapped a young elf girl. Rage boils inside him as he watches the girl's desperate struggles and hears her cries for help. Despite his eagerness to get home, he needed a plan, but Art realizes that dealing with the slave traders is his best course of action right now. He realized that attacking them head-on would be a suicidal move, so he decided to follow them through the forest, utilizing his mana rotation to gather mana all the while. As they journeyed, Art remained vigilant, waiting patiently for the opportune moment when the traders would let their guard down. At long last, Art's patience paid off, and the perfect moment to strike presented itself. As the night descended, he made the decision to attack the slave traders. Using his quick thinking, he threw an acorn at one of the forest hounds, startling it and causing a commotion. Upon hearing the hound's roar, one of the slave traders goes to investigate, providing Art with the opportunity he needs. Moving swiftly, he takes out the slave trader with a mana blade, disabling him before he could raise an alarm. He takes the bandit's dagger while leaving his body to be devoured by the forest hounds. As the forest hounds continue to make noise, another slave trader becomes suspicious and comes to investigate. Upon discovering chewed-up remains of his comrade, he is taken aback, but before he could react, Art swiftly sneaks up on him from behind and slashes him with his newly acquired dagger. With 2 of the slave traders now eliminated, Art is left with only 2 more to deal with. The last 2 slave traders sensed something amiss and became wary as they approached the carriage. One of them spotted Art and lunged at him with his sword, but Art dodged the attack and quickly countered by striking the man's legs. The last man hears the screams of his comrade and comes to help. The injured man warns his comrade, telling him to be careful as Art is a mage. It is revealed that the last man is also a mage. He gets excited about the prospect of capturing Art alive, as a kid mage would get them a very high price. Art readies himself for the incoming attack, but the slave trader proves to be much faster and more agile, darting behind him in an instant. Art narrowly avoids the initial attack and retaliates by throwing a rock and then his dagger, but the man catches the dagger with ease. Once again, using his impressive speed, he suddenly appears before Art and delivers a powerful kick. The slave trader picks up the injured Art from the ground, but Art refuses to give up. With a burst of energy, Art uses fire magic to cause an explosion on the man's arm, causing it to be completely burned. Art uses this opportunity to throw his dagger at the man from behind. It goes right through his neck, instantly killing him. With others dead, he goes to finish off the last injured man. In the carriage, Art finds the elf girl with her hands and legs tied up. After untying her, Art decides to cover her eyes, not wanting her to see the gruesome scene he had left behind. He carries her a safe distance away from the carriage before opening her eyes. The girl expresses her gratitude towards him for rescuing her, but as he prepares to leave, she grabs onto his shirt with a pleading expression. He assumes that she doesn't want to be left alone, but reminds her that she is an elf and should be safe in the forest. However, she tells him that the forest beasts only fear adult elves, causing Art to reluctantly agree to help her find her way home. But to make things more difficult, she doesn't even seem to know her way home. Despite her lack of knowledge of the route, Art had already committed to helping her and thus returns to the wreckage of the carriage to gather supplies for their journey. Though he hopes that it won't be a long one, he takes warm clothes and other supplies from the carriage. Because of the mage's attack, the carriage got completely wrecked, so they won't be able to use it. After releasing the forest hounds, he goes back to the elf girl. He gives her clothes that he found in the carriage, and they begin their journey to find the elves. They walk in the vague direction that the girl pointed towards. As night falls, Art sets up a tent for them to sleep in. He tells Tessia to rest while he keeps watch. He wanted to use this time to figure out this will that Sylvia left him with, but his plans are quickly interrupted. Tessia comes out of the tent and asks him to come in as well. She seems to be scared of being alone, but is unable to ask. She makes up the excuse that he will attract monsters if he sits out, and so he should keep watch while being inside. Art agrees to come in and sits beside her as she tries to go to sleep. As the sun rises, they resume their journey through the forest. Art's mind constantly wanders to his family back home, wondering if they're safe and if they're missing him. However, his thoughts are interrupted by the sharp pain emanating from his mana core, causing him to wince in agony. This pain would come unpredictably and would be almost unbearable for him. He decides not to tell Tessia as he doesn't want her to worry. Slowly, the pain started coming more and more frequently, and every time he would hide it from Tessia. As more days passed, she started to recognize their surroundings, a sure sign that they're getting closer. Despite Art's efforts to strengthen himself with mana, the pain in his mana core only seems to be getting worse, and it's becoming harder to hide it from the worried elf. Their journey has slowed down due to Tessia's growing exhaustion. However, as they continue walking, Tessia spots a green mark on a nearby tree, which signifies that they are getting closer to the elven territory. Finally, they arrive at the teleportation gate. As soon as Tessia activates the gate, the pair are teleported to the elven city, which is stunningly beautiful and leaves Art speechless. Suddenly, a group of elven knights teleport in front of them, and they get down on their knees to welcome Tessia, addressing her as the royal princess. Art is left stunned as he realizes that he has just rescued a princess. Shortly after, Tessia's concerned parents, the king and queen of Eleanor, arrive to reunite with their daughter. They are accompanied by Tessia's grandfather, Virion Erelith. It's a name noted in every history book. He is the former king of Eleanor and the man who led the last war against the humans of the Sapin kingdom. With a little push from Art, Tessia rushes over to embrace her parents. As thanks for saving your daughter, the king invites Art to their home. They also want to know what happened to their daughter. Despite his gentle tone, Art could tell from his eyes that it was not a request but an order. As they arrive at their home, he is awestruck to see the huge castle. Tessia orders the maids to take Art to his room and clean him up. Art tells her that he would first like to explain what happened to the king first. He sits at a long table with the royal family, along with their guard. Art formally introduces himself to the king and queen in the most respectful way possible. He begins the story of their journey. He tells them that he ended up in the forest after getting separated from his parents due to a bandit attack. He cleverly leaves out the part about Sylvia. When he eventually gets to the part about Tessia getting kidnapped by the slave traders, the king becomes furious. He slams his fist on the table, saying he should have known it was humans. Art humbly reminds the king that slave trading is a profession and not a race. This leaves the guards furious, and they all point their swords at him. Virion gestures to the guards to put down their weapons and asks Art how he managed to rescue her, despite being a child. Art tells him that he is a mage, and so he was able to eliminate the slave traders and rescue Tessia. The guards once again get angry and accuse him of lying. Art tells them that whether they believe him or not, the fact is that the princess has returned home safely, and now his only wish is to return to his family in the kingdom of Sapin. Art expresses to the king that his only desire is to return home to his family, now that the princess has returned safely. Tessia becomes anxious at the possibility of losing her new friends so soon. After discussing their options, the king and queen decide to reward Art for his bravery in saving their daughter. However, the teleportation gate that leads to the human kingdom only opens during the summit conference, which occurs once every 7 years. So instead, the king offers to send a group of guards with Art to escort him safely to his house. While the escort is prepared, the king offers to let him stay in the palace. He is given a comfortable room in the palace, but while taking a shower, he experiences another bout of pain from his manticore. He sits on the couch, holding the egg as a way to comfort himself. He starts to wonder how nice it would have been if Sylvia was here to help him. As he is lost in thought, he hears a knock at the door. Just as he opens the door, Tessia headbutts him without a warning. She is upset as Art is gonna leave soon. He is the first friend she has ever had. Moved by her sentiment, he comforts her by putting his arm around her and suggests they explore the castle together. Tessia leads Art on a delightful tour of her cherished spots in the castle, and they finally reach the garden brimming with shimmering globbies. Excitedly, Tessia picks up one of the delicate creatures and offers it to Art to hold. Just as they're admiring the beauty of the garden, Art senses an object hurtling toward them. Reacting quickly, he pulls Tessia close and intercepts the flying object, which turns out to be a knife. He goes on the offensive and confronts the attacker, only to realize that it's Varian. He gets angry and yells at him, questioning how he could try to harm his own granddaughter. Varian then reveals that the knife was just a toy, leaving Art feeling embarrassed about his reaction. He is impressed by Art's quick reaction and instincts, but adds that his mana usage is mediocre at best. This leaves Art questioning the purpose of his visit. To further evaluate his abilities, Varian tosses him a wooden sword, eager to assess his combat skills. Art picks up the wooden sword and prepares to face off against Varian. He charges forward, but unfortunately, his strike only hit Varian's coat, as he uses his incredible speed to dodge the attack and appear behind Art. Varian attempts to deliver a karate chop to Art's neck, hoping to render him unconscious. However, Art's quick reflexes allow him to block the attack just in the nick of time. Varian doesn't stop there, following up his failed karate chop with a punch that forces Art to jump in the air to dodge. Seizing the opportunity, he lands a hit on Art. However, Art refuses to give up and quickly launches another attack. Despite using mana to enhance his movements, he struggles to keep up with Varian's incredible speed and agility. As before, Varian swiftly appears behind Art, causing him to dodge once again. However, this time he uses a sweep kick, throwing Art off balance and causing him to drop his sword. In a moment of impressive maneuvering, Art manages to grab the sword mid-air and scratch Varian's forehead with it just before he's knocked away. Despite Varian ultimately winning the fight, he's impressed that Art managed to land a hit. To everyone's surprise, he offers to take Art as his disciple. He also adds that he can teach him skills that no human mage in Sapine could ever offer. Initially, Art is hesitant and declines the offer, determined to find his family instead of staying to train. However, Varian captures his attention when he reveals that there's a way for Art to communicate with his parents and inform them that he's safe. Before continuing their conversation, Varian requests one of the maids to escort Tessia away. Art is surprised when Varian reveals that he's aware of Art's bouts of pain stemming from his mana core. As he put his coat back on, he asks Art if he's familiar with the concept of a beast will. Even though Art has no idea what he's referring to, he immediately recalls the memory of Sylvia touching him. Varian goes on to explain that when a mana beast reaches a rank of A or higher, it gains the ability to pass on its will to another individual. While he doesn't inquire as to how Art acquired his beast will, he does mention that it's currently causing more harm than good. Art asks if Varian also possesses a beast will, as he knows so much about it. Varian reveals that he is a beast tamer. It is a title one obtains when they completely conquer the beast will inside them. Although Art is eager to see his family, Varian warns him that leaving now could be very dangerous. If Art doesn't learn to control the power within his mana core soon, it could ravage him from the inside. The next morning, Tessia arrives early to wake him up, as she had been informed that he would be staying for a while, so she came to confirm with him. Art tells her that they will know for sure after the trip today. As the carriage is being prepared for their trip, the king and queen try to argue with Varian on the matter of letting Art stay. Even though he saved Tessia, it is inappropriate for a human to stay within the kingdom. It goes against all their traditions. Varian tells them that he has taken a liking to Art and Tessia also wants him to stay. The king tries to continue the argument, but Varian puts an end to it by stating that he will personally mentor Art, so they should let everyone know not to cause him any trouble. The group starts their journey as Art arrives at the carriage. Varian, Art, and Tessia set off to meet Varian's friend, who can assist Art in speaking with his parents. While on the journey, Tessia falls asleep in the carriage. Varian takes this opportunity to explain to Art that Tessia, being a princess, had to grow up in solitude without any companion. He adds that she has been hurt too many times by both adults and even children pretending to be her friends. As a result, she built a wall around herself. However, since Art arrived, Tesha has been smiling more frequently, which Virion appreciates and thanks him for. Finally, the group arrives at a weird-looking house in the heart of the forest. Virion starts banging on the door, calling for the old witch to come out. When she comes out, we see that the word witch does describe her quite accurately. He introduces her as Rena Darkasson, an old friend of his. She is a deviant who can help Art talk to his parents. Rena prepares a large bowl filled with water. As she uses her magic, she instructs him to imagine a mental picture of his parents while gazing at the water's surface. She tells him that once he can see his parents' image in the reflection, he will be able to communicate with them. Art creates a vivid mental picture of his mother and father, and to his amazement, their image begins to emerge slowly in the water. Art's parents were extremely saddened by his alleged demise, and their sorrow was evident in their appearance. While preparing dinner on a typical day, they're astounded to hear Art's voice resonating in their minds, leaving them in shock. He tells them how he managed to survive the fall and is staying in the Elven Kingdom. All the while, his parents can't help but recall the awful memories of when they lost their son. After the fall, Ray searched everywhere, but only found the dead bandit. Alina was so overwhelmed with grief from losing her son that she even attempted suicide. After searching for so long, the couple eventually comes to the conclusion that Art must have died. They eventually go to Xiris, where they go to a wealthy friend of Ray's. He offers him a new job as the head of security, and the couple starts a new life there. In the present, upon hearing their son's voice, the couple cannot help but burst into tears while embracing each other, as they are overwhelmed with emotions. Even Art can't hold back his tears as he watches them in the water's reflection. Now, more determined than ever to get back, he tells Virion that he is ready to start their training as he wants to get back as soon as possible. When they return to the castle, Art is stopped by the king as he tries to enter. Both the king and the queen apologize to him for what they said earlier. The king welcomes him to the castle and thanks him for saving his daughter. They are interrupted by Tesha, who wants to show Art around the city as a form of apology. Art waits patiently for Tesha at the steps of the castle. When she finally arrives, they set off to explore the city. During their stroll, Art bumps into a noble elf. He is one of those elves who believe Art doesn't belong in their city, despite Virion saying otherwise. Fereth Ivsauer comes off as the annoying side character that one reads about in every novel. While introducing himself to Tesha, he doesn't even bother to pay attention to Art. Art mocks him by pretending to mistake his name for a Pokemon and sarcastically introduces himself as well. This angers Fereth and he challenges Art to a duel, staking the honor of his house. He asks him what he will do, telling him that his decision will reflect upon his mentor. Before Art can reply, he decides to take his silence as an acceptance. Tesha is forced to officiate the duel. As the prideful noble confidently moves toward Art, he fails to realize the strength of his opponent. Before he can finish his cliché lines about his genius, Art quickly dashes toward him and takes him out with a single punch, leaving even himself surprised by the weakness of the noble. After all that talk, Tesha grabs him and they continue their tour, relishing the moment as Art's training is scheduled to start the next day, and they might not have the chance to do this again. She asks him if he is nervous, but Art tells her he is excited, not only for the training, but also for seeing his parents. Having come a long way, he is eager to see what the future holds for him. Art and Tesha have become even closer friends while training together under Virion for 3 years. During their training, they learn that there are 4 basic elements: water, earth, fire, and air, and each has a higher form, namely ice, gravity, lightning, and sound, respectively. These higher forms can only be controlled by a mage who has mastered its basic element. Each race has its own elemental affinities, with the dwarves excelling in manipulating earth and fire, and some of them possessing such mastery over these elements that they are capable of conjuring and manipulating magma. On the other hand, elves are limited to water, wind, and earth elements, but they have a much higher affinity for them than humans. In rare cases, elves can produce a special deviant that can control plants. However, elves aren't able to produce mages that can control the higher forms. Humans have the ability to control all 4 basic elements and are capable of producing deviants in any of those elements. They can even produce anomalies that can't be categorized into the basic elements like healers and emitters. There exists a delicate balance of power between all these races. This is the explanation that Art gives Virion as part of his lesson. As part of the process called assimilation, Virion is preparing Art's body to pass on his beast will. Meanwhile, Tesha is undergoing rigorous physical training every day to develop her skills. For an elf, it is not usual to awaken at an age of 10, unlike humans who typically awaken during their preteen years. However, her awakening occurred at the tender age of 9, and since then, she's been honing her conjuring abilities under a mentor while simultaneously engaging in combat training with Virion. She is tired of getting beaten up all day, so she asks Virion to let Art do physical training as well. He explains to her that during the past 3 years, Art has been basically fusing his bones, muscles, and organs with his mana. He assures her that despite not doing physical training, he will become much stronger and more resilient. After 3 years of training, the time has finally come for Virion to stabilize Art's mana core. This means that he will become a beast tamer like him. He puts his hand on Art's chest. Virion explains that he is going to insert a large amount of his mana into Art's mana core. As soon as he starts the process, Art feels immense pain throughout his body. The pain is followed by an explosion of mana which sends Virion and Tesha flying. Virion is shocked as this has never happened before. He asks Art what kind of a beast gave him its will for there to be such a powerful reaction. Virion is left completely awestruck as Art tells him it was a dragon. Art passes out soon after. When he regains consciousness, he finds Virion by his side and expresses his gratitude for their reliability in keeping his beast will a secret. Virion reminds him that the time for his departure is close, with only 4 months left. Art is surprised as he thought the summit conference was still 2 years away. Virion tells him that an interracial tournament is being held for the youths, and so the portal to Ixyrus City will open. He is both happy and worried at the same time as he knows that he will have to break this news to Tesha. Virion tells him that now that the assimilation process is complete, they will train even harder for the last 4 months. Before leaving, Virion also tells him that he will break the news to Tesha. As Art sits in his room alone, he hears a cracking sound. It is the egg that Sylvia left him with, and it is about to hatch. From within the egg, a baby dragon emerges, revealing itself to be a small, adorable creature with jet-black scales, minuscule wings, and barely visible teeth. Overwhelmed by the cuteness of the dragon, Art picks it up. But to his surprise, the little dragon bites him on his arm, leaving behind a distinctive burn mark from its fiery breath. As Art tries to communicate with the baby dragon, he hears a voice in his mind. It appears that the dragon has formed a telepathic bond with him, as she thinks of him as her mother. Deeply touched by this, Art decides to name the dragon Sylvie's in honor of its real mother. Art is taken aback as he senses a surge of excitement emanating from Sylvie at the sound of her newly given name, making him realize that his connection with the baby dragon goes beyond mere telepathy. Overcome with exhaustion, he falls asleep on his bed with Sylvie by his side. He is woken up by an excited Tesha as she discovers the cute baby dragon. He explains everything to her, from how she hatched to his mental connection with her. They take Sylvie to Virion when they go for their usual training lesson. He is completely stunned when he sees a dragon casually sitting on Art's head. Art tells Virion about Sylvie's unusual hatching, and Virion explains that creatures like her typically only hatch in the presence of their own kind. Art realizes that activating Sylvia's will may have caused Sylvie to hatch. Virion suggests he should simply claim that Sylvie is a rare creature when he returns, as many people are not familiar with mana beasts. With Art now fully awakened, Virion suggests that they begin training to enhance his mana core. He emphasizes that the most effective way to strengthen both the mana core and the beast will is through constant combat. Art feels a rush of excitement at the prospect of sparring with Virion once again. His excitement quickly turns into shock as Virion finally decides to reveal his own beast will. A black shadow shaped as a panther surrounds him completely. As the shadow clears up, Art sees a black figure with yellow eyes and razor-sharp claws. It's Virion who has activated his beast will. Beast tamers possess a rare gift, as they are among the few mages who have the ability to tap into the innate powers inherited from a mana beast. This initial stage, commonly referred to as the acquire phase, enables the mage to draw upon the strength and agility of the mana beast, imbuing themselves with heightened speed and physical prowess. Upon entering the second phase, known as the integrate phase, a beast tamer gains the ability to fully harness the distinctive powers of their mana beast. Virion, having dedicated decades to mastering this stage, can now skillfully wield the deadly prowess of a shadow panther to his advantage. Virion tells Art to get ready, warning him that he is going to sneak up behind him. Art is confident that it won't happen as he is now ready because of the warning. He keeps his eyes firmly on Virion, but in the blink of an eye, Virion completely disappears. A moment later, Art feels a dark, shadowy hand on his shoulder. He quickly turns around to attack, but once again Virion disappears from his sight and comes up behind him. Realizing the strength of his foe, Art decides to surrender as he knows he can't win if he can't even follow his movement. As Virion reverts back to his original form, he reveals to Art that while the integrate phase grants him immense power, it comes at a cost. The exertion of the transformation drains him considerably, despite his years of training. Art realizes that it wasn't just his speed. He couldn't feel Virion's presence at all. Virion explains that shadow panthers possess the innate ability to manipulate the wind and sound around them, rendering themselves entirely undetectable. Having completed the demonstration, they resumed their training. Days quickly passed as Art got immersed in his training. Through Virion's guidance and his own insight, he succeeded in unlocking the initial stage of his beast will. Virion also taught him how to hide his beast will when around other mages. Art spent most of his time either strengthening his mana core or studying the dragon will, and when he wasn't doing either, he was constantly sparring with Virion. Despite his busy training schedule, Art made sure to carve out time to enjoy his youth with Tessia, just as Sylvia had hoped he would. However, as the day of his departure drew near, he found it increasingly difficult to deliver the news to Tessia, whom he had spent countless days with over the past few years. Prior to his departure, Art carefully wrapped the feather around Sylvie's mark, allowing it to be concealed more easily. He would be leaving for the interracial tournament in a carriage alongside his fellow competitors. As a farewell gift, Virion presents Art with a compass bearing the crest of House Aerolith. Art hugs Tessia while saying goodbye. He tells her that he will miss her and promises to meet again. When he boards the carriage, he is surprised to find Faerith sitting there. It seems he is one of the participants. Before Faerith can start ranting about how he was beaten unfairly, Art grabs his hand and apologizes for what happened. Faerith is accompanied by two of his friends who are also from noble houses. After a long journey, they finally arrive at the floating city of Cyrus. Without hesitation, Art made his way directly to where his parents were staying. As he stood nervously outside the door, he couldn't help but feel a wave of memories wash over him, reflecting on his journey from the moment he became separated to the present. Despite his anxiety, he summons the courage to knock on the door and waits anxiously for a response. He hears the sound of a young girl's voice approaching. When the door opens, Art respectfully introduced himself to the maid, but his attention is quickly diverted when he saw the person he had been longing to see for so long. It was Alina, who had come to check up on her daughter, Eleanor. As Alina's gaze meets Art's, she is shocked to her core, and she drops the food she is carrying to feed Eleanor. Art can't hold back his tears as he meets his sister for the first time in his life. Alina quickly rushes over and embraces Art. When Ray hears what is going on, he too comes rushing over from all the way from the garden. He too hugs Art and Alina as the family of four all embrace each other tightly, with tears of joy streaming down their faces. After things settle down, Alina begins to ask Art all the typical questions that a worried mother would, such as how he has gotten so thin and how his voice has changed. As she does so, she calls out to Eleanor to come meet her older brother. She climbs down from the couch and makes her way to Art. He gets down on his knees and introduces himself to his sister. The two parents couldn't be happier watching their kids bond. After the initial questions, Art begins to explain everything to his family. Although he trusts them completely, he chooses to leave out the part about Sylvia and his beast will, instead telling them that he found Sylvie in a beast's den. He explains that her mother was dying from an injury and he couldn't save her, so he decided to adopt the little creature and raise her. He feels guilty about keeping secrets from his family, but he believes it's necessary to protect them until he becomes strong enough. Ray, being his usual self, asks him how strong he has become. He tells Art that he has been working as an instructor for the guards at the Hellstee auction house. Curious about Ray's progress, Art asks about the current stage of Ray's mana core. He boasts about his mana core having reached the dark orange. He is left dumbfounded when Art reveals that his mana core is at the light red stage, which is just one stage behind Ray. Upon hearing the news of Ray's son's return, Vincent and his family rush over to greet him and his family. They had been taking care of Art's family while he was gone. Ray introduces Art to Vincent and his wife, Tabitha, and Art respectfully greets them with a deep bow. Vincent expresses surprise at his respectful behavior, even questioning if he is truly Ray's son. Tabitha warmly welcomes Art to their home and introduces him to their young daughter, Lilia. Like Tesha, Lilia instantly falls in love with Sylvie upon meeting her. After the introduction, everyone moves out to the yard to witness the sparring match between Ray and Art. As they wait for the match to start, Alina tells Tabitha that Art is a mage with a light red mana core. But Vincent is in disbelief, finding it hard to accept that an 8-year-old could possess such abilities, as even the genius students at the Xiris Academy are only at the dark red stage, and they are 11 or 12. As the duo kicks off their match, Art charges toward Ray with incredible speed. He attempts to punch him, but Ray skillfully blocks the attack. Ray grabs Art's arm, intending to toss him, but Art counters and flips him instead. Despite being thrown, he expertly maneuvers his footwork to avoid falling. With the fight reset, Ray shifts gears and advances to the next stage. He conjures his magical powers and bursts into flames, covering his entire body. When a child is born, their affinities and strengths are already set. Usually, parents consult professionals to learn what route to push their newborn mage towards. For conjurers, it is plainly obvious what their affinities are. But for augmenters, it's much more subtle until they cross a certain threshold and are able to manifest elements. For Ray, who has been fighting and training from an early age, it took him until the orange stage to turn his explosive mana into an actual fire. In Art's previous life, affinities weren't decided at birth, but it was a path that one chose to follow. This meant that they weren't restricted. Following Ray's lead, Art decides to manifest his own element, which is lightning.
As the fight begins, both utilize the strengths of their particular elements. Art uses the speed he gains from his lightning element, while Ray tries to counter using the explosive power of the fire element. The fight quickly ramps up as both elements clash, causing a massive explosion. As the fight continues, Art finds himself on the back foot as Ray slowly overwhelms him with a barrage of punches. Art uses his amazing speed to dodge the punches and tries to counter with an uppercut. Ray also prepares to attack with a kick. However, just before their attacks connect, both fighters stop. Both Art and Ray recognize that the fight has reached its end. While training with Virion, Art discovered lightning to be his most successful deviant affinity, as he struggled with the instability of his ice magic and had yet to train with sound and gravity. Nonetheless, he enjoyed boasting about his lightning abilities to his parents. Vincent is left in awe after witnessing Art's remarkable talent, and even Tabitha concedes to his extraordinary abilities. At lunch, the Helsty family is shocked to find out that Art awakened at the age of 3. Vincent even suggests enrolling Art in the Xiris Academy. It is the most prestigious magic institution in the entire continent. Tabitha agrees with her husband and even offers to sponsor Art so he can study free of cost. Alice, however, tries to politely refuse the generous offer, citing the family's already abundant support. She adds that Art is still only 8 and the academy may not even consider him. Nevertheless, Vincent reassures her that it would not pose an issue as he had conducted business with the academy director before and can vouch for Art. Before Vincent can elaborate further, Art interjects and expresses his desire to spend some time with his family before contemplating parting ways again to attend the academy. As Art makes a sudden exit from the dining table, Lilia takes notice of his unusual behavior and decides to follow him. She follows him to the hallway and offers to take him to a great place she knows and takes him to the servant quarters, where the maids and servants are already present, and they all seem delighted to see Lilia. One of the older maids, Maria, even gives Lilia a plate of food, suggesting that it's a regular occurrence where Lilia sneaks away to Maria's quarters to indulge in food without her mother's knowledge. One of the maids confides in Art that Lilia often seeks refuge here when she's feeling stressed. The maid goes on to explain that despite neither Vincent nor Tabitha being mages, they have high expectations for Lilia to awaken as one, which causes her constant anxiety about potentially disappointing them. Art begins to understand the situation. As night falls, Alice and Ray come to bid Art goodnight and inform him that they plan to go shopping together the following day to make up for lost time and strengthen their bond. Art is woken up early by Sylvie. He is visited by Eleanor, who has come to wake him up so they can go shopping. After the morning breakfast, Art heads out accompanied by Alice, Eleanor, Tabitha, and Lilia for shopping as well as to explore the city. The first shop that catches Art's attention is a shop full of mysterious orbs. Tabitha explains that they are called beast cores. They are expensive orbs extracted from mana beasts that can be used to enhance one's power, with the possibility of acquiring a beast will from them. However, they are very expensive, with some costing hundreds or even thousands of gold. Tabitha offers to show Art the Helstia auction house, which often receives many beast cores. Their conversation is interrupted by Lilia. She is eager to take Art to a certain shop. To his horror, it turns out to be a barber shop. Art is reluctant, but eventually gets a new hairstyle with the help of Alice and the rest of the group. Afterward, they continue their shopping tour. While walking through the market, Art spots a group of teenagers in uniforms causing a commotion. Lilia informs him that they are students of Exiris Academy, which is a status symbol, and they are treated like royalty by the common folk. As they continue with their day, they are oblivious to the fact that they are being followed. The stalker appears to have set their sights on Sylvie. Upon their return, Art is taken aback to find Cynthia Goodsky, the director of Exiris Academy, waiting for him as an unexpected guest. The Academy's reputation precedes itself, as it is considered the most prestigious institution for mages who possess both talent and the right background. Anyone who has made an impact in the world has had ties with the Exiris Academy. This is the kind of fame the Academy had, standing tall above all the other countless academies of its kind throughout the continent. And on top of this is the Academy's very own director, Cynthia Goodsky. Despite the palpable tension in the room, Art remains oblivious to the importance of the person standing before him. As Cynthia greets him and extends her hand in friendship, when Art tries to do the same, he is quickly made to bow by Alice as she apologizes to Cynthia for her son's rudeness. Cynthia is quick to forgive Art, expressing her gratitude for Vincent's contributions to the school. Vincent and Tabitha escort her to the courtyard for a demonstration of Art's talents, treating her with utmost deference and respect. As they walk towards the courtyard, Alice drags Art around, but his only concern seems to be his missed dinner. Cynthia takes notice of Sylvie and assumes she is Ray's contracted beast, but Art corrects her by saying she is his bond. Art tells her the story of finding Sylvie in a beast's den. Cynthia is surprised as she has never seen a man-a-beast like Sylvie before. When they arrive at the courtyard, Cynthia notices Art's calm demeanor and starts to wonder if it's his arrogance or confidence, but he is simply focused on his dinner. During his training with Varian, Art mastered the elements of fire and water magic first, followed by wind and earth. For the demonstration, he chooses to use his weaker elements of wind and earth. He starts the fight by using earth magic, which surprises his family. Art destroys the ground around him and kicks a rock in the air, sending it flying towards Cynthia. She is able to easily counter it by creating a swirling wall using her wind magic. Art uses a combination of earth and wind magic to launch himself toward her. Using his own wind magic, he breaks to throw the swirling wall and tries to punch her. However, a small flick of the wrist is all it takes for her to produce a powerful gust of wind, sending him flying backward. Keeping his training in mind, he uses wind magic to orient himself and uses earth magic to suspend a stone in the air to land. The fight continues to intensify. Art dashes in for another attack, but is once again blown away by Cynthia's wind magic. On an ending note, Cynthia decides to try to attack herself. She casts a spell, sending 4 raging tornadoes toward him. Art conjures up his own wind magic to counter, creating winds in the opposite direction to deflect the tornadoes. She is impressed by Art's performance. Despite his overconfidence, she admires his magical and combat prowess. However, she decides to give him one more test, calling it an extra credit. She uses sound magic to send loud, screeching noises toward Art. Despite the agony, Art manages to stay conscious and passes the test. Cynthia shares the good news with Ray, expressing her admiration for Art's use of wind and earth magic and her temptation to teach him herself. However, when Ray asks about Art's use of earth and wind magic, Vincent reveals that he called Cynthia because he believed Art could use fire and lightning magic. Art shocks everyone by revealing that he can use all 4 elements, causing Cynthia to lose her balance and needs Ray's assistance to stand. Art apologizes to his family for keeping his strength a secret, and Cynthia senses that something is bothering him, prompting her to take action. She puts up a barrier around herself and Art so no one can listen in on their conversation. Now able to speak his mind, Art tells her that he revealed his strength because he needs 2 things, power and influence. If she can keep his family safe, he will not only attend the Exiris Academy, but also consider her his benefactor. He tells her that he wants to live his life to the fullest for now, so in 3 years' time he will join the Academy. Until then, he wants to be an adventurer. As Art reveals his desire to go adventuring, his family reacts as expected. Alice, having been an adventurer herself, is filled with worry and adamant about not letting her son face the same dangers she did, especially after the fact that he was gone for so many years. Ray tries to calm her down and suggests that they hear Art out. However, Alice's anger is redirected towards Ray, and she breaks down in tears, remembering the struggles they endured to get to where they are now. Art reaches out and takes his sobbing mother's hand. He tells her that he wants to spend more time with her, but he also wants to experience all that he has missed out on due to his training in the Elven Kingdom. To convince her, he proposes that he can have a supervisor with him during adventuring. Ray jumps in and starts considering potential candidates for this task, earning Alice's wrath for even suggesting the idea of letting their son leave. After a lengthy discussion, they come up with a compromise. Alice gives Art her consent, but with 3 conditions. First, he must wait until his birthday in 3 months. Second, he must have a guard with him at all times. And lastly, he must visit home at least once every 2 months. Ray suggests that the twin horns, who are supposed to be coming soon for an expedition, would be the perfect candidates to be Art's guard. Even Alice is surprised by Ray's sudden genius. Art, on the other hand, can't wait to reunite with the twin horns after so long. While they wait for their arrival, Art decides to have a meeting with Vincent. Vincent is taken aback by the strong presence that Art gives off. He feels more nervous talking to this 8-year-old than when he did during his meeting with the King of Sepin. Art tells him that the reason for this meeting is that he wants Vincent to acquire a few items for him, those being a protective cloak, a sword his size, and a mask capable of altering the wearer's voice. Art puts forward an intriguing proposal as compensation. He has discovered a method to hasten a person's awakening. He was going to help his sister, Eleanor, with it, so he offers to use it on Lilia as well so she can become a mage and attend Osiris Academy. In his previous life, Art was a weak boy who lost the most important person in his life due to his weakness. In his current life, his goal is to become strong not to seek revenge, but to protect his loved ones. As Art is lost in his thoughts about his plan to help Lilia awaken, his mother returns home from shopping with Lilia and Tabitha, interrupting his chain of thoughts. Upon hearing about Art's plan, Alice and Tabitha become angry, assuming it to be some sort of a joke. However, Art reassures them that he is serious about his plan. With both Lilia and Eleanor present, Art decides to try out his new method. To sense mana, Art teaches them a special breathing technique, which involves slow and deep breaths. The next step is to locate the core fragments in their bodies. Eleanor seems to have an easier time with this step than Lilia. To help them visualize the particles even better, Art pumps some of his mana into their bodies. Once they can see the small particles, he instructs them to focus their thoughts and bind the particles together. Despite his exhaustion from using this method, Art persists, but eventually stops. The anxious parents approach Art, inquiring if Lilia can truly become a mage. Art gives them the good news that although it may take a few years, Lilia should have no issues becoming a mage. Tabitha expresses her joy by embracing Art and breaking into tears. Following this event, Art's life falls into a comfortable routine for the next few months. Every morning, he helps Lilia and Eleanor with their awakening and then focuses on his own training. 2 months pass by in the blink of an eye. The time has finally arrived for the arrival of twin horns. Art waits impatiently at the door, anxious to meet them. As soon as the door knocks, he dashes over to answer. As the door opens, Angela rushes in and quickly hugs him, almost smothering him with her love. As soon as their eyes meet, Durden breaks down into tears as he recalls the memories of the time when he failed to save Art as he fell down the cliff. The next two to enter the house are Helen and Adam. Both of them are also extremely happy to see him. However, the most surprising reaction comes from Jasmine as she comes running in and hugs Art. He starts sobbing uncontrollably while apologizing to him. After things settle down, everyone starts getting ready for the event at the Helsty auction house. While they get dressed, Ray tells Vincent how surprised he is by his son's growth. He mentions the pressure he feels emanating from him every time they spar. It's the pressure similar to facing someone who has fought countless battles. There are even times during their fights when Art trips up as if he is not used to his own body. He starts wondering why this is. However, Vincent dismisses it as early puberty. The whole group, including the twin horns, dress up in fancy black clothing to attend the event. As they leave, Vincent once again thanks Art for what he is doing for Lilia. The group arrives at the auction house in carriages driven by giant lizards, and they are greeted by 2 servants upon opening the carriage door. Art is taken aback by the grandeur of the auction house, which resembles a colossal castle. The event is the 10th anniversary of the Helstia auction house, an occasion that has aroused the excitement of nobles and adventurers alike, as it is a rare opportunity to acquire priceless artifacts kept locked away for this very event. Ray assumes the role of head of security, and Art feels a sense of pride towards his father. The twin horns also depart to assist Ray, while Alice, Tabitha, Lilia, Eleanor, and Art enter the auction house to take their seats. Despite having been a king in his past life, Art is impressed by the interior of the auction house. They proceed to the private viewing room that has been reserved for them, which offers a clear view of all the guests entering the auction house. The chief guests for the event, the King and Queen of Sapin, along with their family, eventually arrive. The king's presence at the event highlights its significance. The group pays their respects by kneeling and introducing themselves to the royal family. The king notices Sylvia, Art's bonded mana beast, and inquires about her. The court's wizard suddenly lets out a surprised scream from the back of the room, having apparently realized Sylvia's true nature. However, the king intervenes and prevents him from further investigating, reminding him that it is neither the time nor the place to study someone's pet. After the wizard apologizes, everyone prepares to take their seats as the event is about to commence. Nevertheless, Art detects something strange about the wizard. The auction is about to commence, and the host stirs up the audience's excitement by promising them rare and valuable items. The adventurers express their enthusiasm with boisterous cheers, while the nobles maintain their dignified demeanor. Before the auction can begin, the host and the crowd pay homage to the king and queen with a deep bow. They also acknowledge the man responsible for organizing the event, Vincent, by giving him a round of applause. With the formalities concluded, the auction gets underway. As Art observes the scene, he is momentarily reminded of his past life as a king, but he dismisses these thoughts to enjoy the occasion. While scanning the room, he notices his mother and Tabitha conversing with the queen. He also observes that the queen is carrying a wand, which leads him to deduce that she must be a conjurer. However, he cannot detect her mana, which could indicate that she is either carrying an artifact to conceal it or possesses a high enough level to elude his senses. The auctioneer then presents a sword for bidding, and Vincent seizes the opportunity to ask Art if he wishes for him to acquire it. Since he is the proprietor, price is not a concern. The sword, crafted by a master smith who is also a fire artificer, is a short sword with a thunderhawk core in its handle, allowing the user to generate electricity around the blade's edge, inflicting greater damage. Bidding for the sword starts at 50 gold coins, and the crowd eagerly places their bids in hopes of obtaining it. Art cannot help but notice the excessive price of the sword, which is worth more than a modest house in Exiris. In his hometown of Ashbur, a handful of copper coins can sustain an average family comfortably for a considerable time, while the opening bid for the sword can feed a family in Ashbur for 250 years. Politely declining Vincent's offer, Art explains that he seeks something less distinctive. Vincent understands Art's preferences, knowing him well. Why settle for a few sparks when one can wield lightning itself? Vincent assures Art that he has already acquired all the items that he requested, except for a sword, and advises him to notify him if he finds something he likes during the auction. The auction proceeds with a myriad of exquisite items on display, including weapons, armor, and beast cores. Even the king bids on an A-class beast core, which will reveal if it contains a beast once the recipient absorbs it. Engrossed in the auction, Art fails to notice Sylvie's absence until he finds her conversing with the court mage. Rushing over to her, he calls her away. Before leaving, the court mage warns Art that a commoner has no right to own a special beast and threatens to ensure that Sylvie belongs to him. The mage's insolent remark infuriates Art, prompting him to lose control and unleash his rage in the form of bloodlust toward the mage. A few moments prior to the incident involving Art, Vincent had been discussing the newly acquired beast core with the king. Suddenly, an intense wave of bloodlust swept over them, causing Vincent to drop to his knees in terror. The queen and guards immediately sprang into action, ready to confront the unknown threat, while the king drew his sword to protect his family. The twin horns and Ray, even from outside, could sense the disturbance and rushed to the scene. Everyone in the room was left stunned and bewildered by the sudden turn of events caused by Art's loss of control. Art himself was worried that he may have exposed his true powers, but his fears were quelled by the news that an unrelated intruder had been apprehended, thus saving him from exposure. The auction proceeded as usual, and the final item presented was an infant world lion, leaving the audience in awe. World lions are rare and possess the ability to develop into B-class or even A-class mana beasts with proper care and nurturing, offering the owner a chance to become a legendary beast tamer by acquiring its beast will. The bid starts off at 500 gold, but it doesn't take much time for the price to reach all the way up to 800 gold. However, the bid is won by the king with a staggering price of 1,000 gold, which is double the original price. The crowd is left disappointed as they dare not challenge the king with their bid. Vincent congratulates the king and asks him if he wishes to raise the beast himself, but the king tells him that he plans on gifting it to his son Curtis. Upon hearing this, Curtis gets up from his chair and respectfully thanks his father for the honor. With the end of the auction, everyone prepares to leave to get the items that the king bought. However, they are stopped by the court mage as he wishes to make a request. He whispers to the king about his wish to get Sylvie from Art. Even though Art couldn't hear what they were saying, he knows something is off. They make their way to the storage where the king gets his items. Vincent also presents Art with the items he had requested. The bad feeling that Art had comes true as the king calls Ree over. The king introduces the court mage, Sebastian, to the group, telling them about all the great services he has provided to the royal family. He explains that Sebastian has taken a liking to Art's bond, and it would be a great service to the kingdom if he can get Sylvie. As Ray knows the importance of Sylvie to Art, he apologizes to the king and explains that he cannot speak on Art's behalf since he had no part in acquiring Sylvie. It is up to Art to make the decision. Alice becomes worried because she knows her son well enough to understand that he would never want to part with Sylvie, but at the same time, they cannot refuse the king's request. The king approaches Art, and instead of lowering his head, Art meets his gaze with defiance. The king respectfully makes the request to Art once again and promises to present him with a great sword that suits a young aspiring knight, as he heard Art's conversation with Vincent. Before responding, Art takes a deep breath to calm himself so he doesn't say anything inappropriate. Then he bows deeply and respectfully towards the king and refuses the offer, stating that nothing can replace Sylvie. Sebastian gets angry with Art's defiance, but the king orders him to stop. The king then proposes a trade, offering the World Lion Cub he just acquired for his bond, thinking it would be a better offer for Art since he does not know Sylvie's true nature. However, Art declines once again. The tension in the room grows as tempers begin to flare up. No one would dare to deny the king's request even once, much less twice. The king starts losing his patience and orders him once again to give up his bond, despite it being a request. Everyone in the room can tell from the tone that it's more of an order. Art calms his anger once again before responding, asking the king how much he would be willing to sell his own children for. He explains that the king doesn't understand the weight of his request, so he hopes to clarify it with this question. This statement leaves everyone, including the king's own family, shocked. With a gesture from Sebastian, the charges at Art to punish him for his insolence. The guard swings his sword with every intention of slicing him in half. However, Art swiftly dodges the attack and counters by throwing a powerful uppercut, knocking him out with one attack. Sebastian, however, chooses to continue the assault and tries to cast a spell in Art's direction. Art uses the same spell that Sylvie used and freezes time for everyone except himself and Sebastian. Using this opportunity, Art lets out all his anger and attacks Sebastian. In the blink of an eye, he appears before him and breaks his leg. Desperate and in pain, he calls out to the guards to help him, not realizing that Art has frozen time for everyone. Sebastian is left terrified as he realizes that he is on his own with this child mage, whom he believed to be a mere kid, but in reality is a true monster. From everyone else's point of view, Art seemingly counters the guard's attack, but suddenly collapses without any apparent cause. Sebastian, on the other hand, appears with a broken leg. The queen immediately orders her men to locate an emitter to heal Sebastian's injury, while Alice and Ree watch heartbroken as their son undergoes suffering once again. Art wakes up in his bed, unable to recall what happened after using the static void to freeze time. Thanks to Sylvia's will, he has acquired the ability to use all her techniques, making him a formidable opponent. However, despite his many years of training, he is still only able to use it for a few seconds, and that too with a harsh backlash. This time he used it for too long, and thus the reason for his loss of consciousness. He is visited by Alice and Sylvie in his room. She is relieved to see her son. She explains that the doctor told them that he most likely lost consciousness from the shock. This leaves Art relieved as he wouldn't have to explain everything to her, but he is also very sad about making her worry again. Due to the panic that was caused by the guard's attack, the king decided to end things by excusing himself. Alice tells him that Ray is talking to the king's representative as they speak about everything that happened. Art assures Alice that he is fine now and goes downstairs to check out the situation. It seems that the king's representative is trying to end the matter by compensating them with money. However, this leaves Ray angered as he believes that his son's life is more important and can't be compensated with money. Art, on the other hand, tries to smooth things out and apologies to the man for his behavior. He accepts the gold and ends the matter there. He asks about Sebastian's condition, still concerned about any potential exposure. The man explains that Sebastian claimed Art was responsible for his injury, but the lingering mana on Art's staff indicates that his spell ricocheted off the guard and hit Sebastian instead. He is relieved and amused by the ironic turn of events. With the situation resolved, the man departs and Ray gives him the bag of gold, which he had originally intended for Art's use as an adventurer. Art thanks Ray and stores the money safely before examining the items he obtained from Vincent. He is pleased to find everything, including a mask, which he can use to conceal his identity and perhaps let loose a bit. With Art's birthday coming soon, Ray holds a meeting with the Twin Horns to see if they want to volunteer to be Art's supervisor. He tells them that he is hoping Helen or Durden would be up to the task. He even offers to compensate them for their trouble. However, Durden reassures him that they are like family, and he would love to accompany Art and watch him grow. Helen feels the same way. However, their conversation is interrupted by a surprising development as Jasmine volunteers to do it. Jasmine is the type of adventurer who hates escorting missions the most, so it comes as a surprise to everyone. However, when one thinks about it, she is most suited for this task. Durden specializes in defensive AoE spells, which are more suited for a large party rather than an individual, and Helen's skills aren't good at protecting anyone. Alice once again asks her if she is really sure, but Jasmine assures her that she is fine with it. Even Adam agrees with her. Jasmine is the only augmenter among the Twin Horns with an elemental affinity. She has also passed the light orange stage. With her wind attribute, she is the most suited for this. She too seems most happy to accompany Art as they have become close friends. When Art returns home with his parents, he is surprised to see Lilia meditating on her own. Art is happy as this way she will be able to awaken quickly without his help. If Ellie also starts meditating on her own, she can awaken at around the age of 7 or 8. But it may be for the better, as awakening too early may draw unnecessary attention. Now that he has a supervisor, Art and Ree decide to head to the auction house to get the final item that he needs, a sword. This is the first time he meets Vincent and Tabitha after the incident with the king. After answering their questions about his health, they head to storage to pick up a sword for Art. The storage is a giant warehouse with all kinds of weapons and other items, ranging from armor to bows and many different types of swords. Art gets excited, but his excitement quickly turns to disappointment. Despite the huge amount of swords, there doesn't seem to be anything he wants. Many of the swords are two-handed or large one-handed swords. His search for a dependable sword that he can use with his small body bore little fruit. While searching, he hears a rustling sound. It's Sylvia as she struggles to drag something from under a pile of boxes. It looks like a black stick. However, upon inspection, Art realizes that it's a sword in a sheath. He tries to pull it out, but it seems to be stuck. He even imbues it with mana, but try as he might, the sword doesn't budge. Art suddenly has an epiphany. After he removes Sylvia's feather from the mark on his arm, the sword finally comes out. It's a blue translucent sword, as if it were made out of light. Art couldn't help but think how beautiful the sword was, too much to be considered a weapon. However, there is still one problem. Art realizes that it is too heavy for him to use effectively with the sheath as well. He tries it on a wooden barrel, but it doesn't cut through completely. While examining the blade, he discovers an engraving that reads Dawn's Ballad WK4, possibly indicating the sword's creator. Suddenly, he feels a sharp pain in his hand, and the sword lights up with electricity, drawing some of his blood and absorbing it. Art is shocked to see that the blade has shrunk to match his size. He tests the sword on the wooden barrel once again, and this time he is able to slice through it cleanly. Although it is rare, there have been cases of master artificers making weapons that bond with a single user, allowing for better manipulation of mana. However, there are no such cases for a sword. Art is called on by Ray, telling him to hurry up as they are getting late. Art decides not to tell them about his new weapon and picks out a random sword as a substitute. Ray decides to give the sword a try. Although he finds the balance to be a little off, he comes to the conclusion that it may be good enough for Art due to his small size. However, Ray grows curious when he sees the strange stick dangling from his waist. Art makes up the excuse that he found it and thought it may be a good practice tool. One of the workers at the auction house tells them that a senile old man threw it at one of their merchants, mumbling about how no one is worthy of it. Despite multiple inspections, they haven't found anything special about it, and so she tells them that it's just a sturdy, hard cane. Art uses a cute face and asks Vincent if he can have it, even calling him Uncle Vincent. Just like Alice, he is unable to resist and agrees to give him the stick. Art's birthday has finally arrived, and his family and the twin horns throw him a grand party. Vincent prepares a lavish feast for everyone, and they all have a great time, enjoying the celebration as a family. After the feast, they move on to the gift-giving ceremony. Alice and Ray are the first to present their gift. They give Art a leather glove adorned with 3 gems. Alice explains that Ray hunted and skinned the leather from a spiked aurochs, and the gems are imbued with her minor healing spells. This can help him stay safe during missions. Art hugs them and expresses his gratitude for the thoughtful present. Then it's Vincent's turn. He kneels down and presents Art with a pair of 2 rings. He quickly gets a slap on the head for his failed attempt at humor. However, he still presents the gift while Tabitha explains that it's a gift for the whole family. Art can wear one of the rings, and the other is for Alice. As long as he has it on, it will alert Alice if his mana level drops to a dangerous level. Alice quickly hugs Tabitha, thanking her for the gift. However, Art realizes that it could be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it could ease his family's worries, but on the other hand, it might make them anxious waiting for the ring to go off. The twin horns are the last to give Art a gift, a transmission scroll that can be used to communicate with someone once. Adam explains that the user can record a message for anyone they want, and the receiver can reply with a message as well. The following day marks the beginning of Art's career as an adventurer. Alice hugs him and urges him to stay safe. Regardless of how wealthy or influential he becomes, her only desire for her son is his safe return. As night falls, the twin horns bid their farewells and leave the mansion. As Art prepares for bed, he reminds himself that he must become stronger to protect his family. The next day, Art prepares himself with all the items that he got from Vincent. After a long goodbye to his family, promising them that he would be safe, he steps outside and finds Jasmine waiting for him in a carriage. As they make their way to the Adventurers Guild to register Art, Jasmine notices Sylvie's altered appearance without her horns. Art explains her ability to change her form, making her look like a black lizard that draws less attention. They head to the reception desk. Before Art could start speaking, Jasmine stops him and instead tells the receptionist that she would like to sponsor him for a rank examination. The receptionist starts to get a little nervous and personally escorts the pair to the examination room. They start getting the attention of all the other adventurers in the room due to their special treatment. The pair arrive at the guild master's room. The receptionist tells him that an A-class adventurer has requested Art to be taken in for a rank examination. The guild master tells the receptionist to stand outside. He asks Jasmine how she has been these days while addressing her as Miss Flamesworth. He also mentions having met her father not too long ago. Art notices a subtle change in her mood at the mention of her father. The guild master introduces himself to Art. He tells him that his name is Caspian Bladeheart. He is in charge of this branch of the Adventurers Guild. Normally, there is an application to be filled out along with an inspection of one's mana core, but since Art is being sponsored by Jasmine, Caspian decides to skip these steps and go directly to the practical exam. Art notices that the Flamesworth name is being spoken with quite a bit of respect, leading him to suspect that maybe Jasmine comes from a high-ranking family. Caspian mentions that names aren't mandatory to become an adventurer, however, since he has close relations with Jasmine, he would like to know a way to address him. While inspecting his mask the night before, Art noticed that the blue mark on his mask resembles a half note on a music sheet, so he decides to name himself after that and tells Caspian that he can call him Note. As they shake hands, Art can instantly tell that Caspian is very strong. With the introductions complete, Caspian instructs the receptionist waiting outside to take them to the examination hall. As they arrive, the sounds of screams and clashing weapons greet them. It's clear that the rank examination is already underway. An augmenter and an examiner are engaged in combat using a long polearm. Art watches the fight closely, analyzing every move. However, the examinee doesn't appear to be very strong. Despite launching numerous attacks, the examiner easily dodges them and defeats him with a single strike. Once the fight ends, the examiner delivers a lengthy assessment of their battle. Despite his lackluster performance, the examiner notes that Art has an affinity for fire. As a result, the examiner awards him a ranking of D. Up next is Diane Whitehall. Despite her beauty, she is a clumsy girl. After making her way to the battlefield, she introduces herself to the examiner as an 18-year-old conjurer. Her mana core is in a solid orange state. Her specialty is water magic. The examiner instructs her that there are medical staff and an emitter present on site, so she doesn't have to worry about anything. Art watches on from the stands. Once a conjurer reaches the orange stage, it becomes apparent where their specialty lays. Rather than focusing on all 4 elements, it's much more efficient to specialize in one particular element. Art heard from another adventurer that if a conjurer claims dual specialization or up, they are given a more difficult test to more accurately test their abilities. As the exam starts, Diane quickly casts a defensive spell to protect herself with a bubble of water. Jasmine explains that conjurers lack proficiency in reinforcing their bodies with mana, so they are trained to set up defensive measures immediately. The examiner retaliates with her own water magic, creating a layer of muddy water around Diane to block her vision. However, Diane bursts her water bubble to clear the muddy water and sends a powerful stream of water at the examiner, who easily dodges it. Quick to react, Diane turns the stream into a fog, but this move backfires as the examiner suddenly appears behind her and bops her on the head with her staff, signaling the end of the battle. Despite her loss, the examiner praises Diane's good mana control and casting speed, awarding her a C rank. The next participant is Elijah Knight. However, something unusual happens. Instead of calling the adventurer for the exam, the examiners have a meeting among themselves and announce that due to their status, they have been assigned the rank of B-rank adventurer. Art's eyes meet the adventurer's. Despite his supposed status, the adventurer looks like a normal boy with nothing exceptional. The exam continues as the next participant is called. It's Lucas Wykes, an arrogant young boy with an affinity for fire. Even Art is surprised to find out that he is 11 years old with a light orange mana core. As soon as the fight begins, Lucas creates a raging fire vortex, which slowly morphs into a flame guardian. The rest of the examiners are impressed by the young talent. Lucas uses the flame guardian to attack, however, the examiner uses her earth magic to encase it in a tomb. Art realizes the reasoning behind this move. Due to the lack of oxygen, the flame guardian will naturally be extinguished in due time. However, it turns out to be a distraction as Lucas quickly fires off another spell which creates small balls of fire all around the examiner. Lucas makes the fireballs explode, but the examiner swiftly dodges the explosions and counters by creating a hand made of mud using earth magic. Lucas tries to jump away, but the hand manages to grab his leg from he is able to do so. Lucas releases the rest of the fireballs, but the examiner forms a protective barrier around both of them to avoid the attack. Having used up all his attacks, the battle ends with a victory for the examiner. She praises Lucas for his high mana pool and his use of high-tier fire affinity. However, she is interrupted by a frustrated Lucas as he tries to once again attack. One of the other examiners is forced to step in to stop the attack. Despite his rude attitude, the examiner awards him with a B rank due to his incredible potential. However, this is not good enough for Lucas as he leaves frustrated for not having been awarded A rank. Finally, it's Art's turn as the announcer calls note for the exam. Art approaches the battlefield, pondering how best to approach the exam. As soon as he steps onto the field, the examiner feels immense pressure emanating from him. However, before the fight can begin, Caspian interrupts them, ordering the examiner to stand down so he can personally conduct Art's exam. The examiner is surprised and protests that it's unnecessary for a double A class to test an examinee. But Caspian explains that he is doing it out of his close ties with Jasmine, Art's sponsor. The two mages face each other, prepared to start their fight.